All right, so looks happy. So thanks everybody for joining us. Again, welcome to SeaRUG, the last SeaRUG of the year. I'm your host for today, David Diarsa, current board president for SeaRUG. And thank you for joining us. It's our pleasure to host these meetings, and we're really looking forward to getting to them in person, hopefully next year. We can only hope. So if you're familiar with SeaRUG, I like to do a couple of thank yous, a couple of introductions, a couple of announcements, and then get off the podium as quickly as possible and turn it over to our feature presenter. So let me do just that. And welcome to my blank void at the office today. So at the Snagger room. Now I know how John Oliver feels, or how he felt for a year. But anyway, let me get started over here and go over the agenda real quick. Today we've got our returning champion, Kurt Egley of Topcon Solutions, is back to talk about Revit parameters, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I'm sure I'll have a couple of things to add on to the presentation at the end and give my 2 cents. And parameters are extremely powerful and a really great way to manage your models, and especially if you think about downstream views of your models, the parameters really start to come alive. So we'll look forward to that. In the meantime, let me give a really heartfelt thank you to all of our sponsors for this year. The last year and a half have been pretty tough for SeaRUG, and that our format has been completely thrown upside down because of COVID and all the restrictions that have forced us online. So thank you for everybody that's been part of the SeaRUG family over the years, and a couple of names up here on this slide that are actually new for this year. Especially thank you to them as well for coming on board during this time. Typically, the sponsor dollars go pretty far in terms of providing a pretty good lunch and what I would argue is the best venue of any Revit user group on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And obviously, being limited to GoTo or Zoom is a little bit of a bummer, but we'll just hope for better times starting in 22, and we'll really hold on to that hope. But again, a really big thank you to everybody that's part of the SeaRUG family. We can't thank you enough, as well as everybody that's on the board. Right, everybody gives of your time to make sure that this content is relevant and fresh and interesting to our viewership. Thank you to all of you. Again, a little bit challenging, a little bit different because of COVID, and I'm really looking forward to our regular board meetings in the near future. Let's hope, so we can get back to the way that we used to do business, which as much as we're adaptable and we have to be, I really miss some aspects of how we used to do things. So let's try to get back to that, right? But big thank you to you. You know who you are. Your names are up here on screen. So please join me in a big thank you to everybody that's part of the SeaRUG community and board and really works to put together content for you. Quick obligatory slide here. We put these things up on the YouTube channel after the fact, and can't overstate how important it is for engagement and for the reach of our group that you all subscribe, like, hit the little bell icon so that you get notifications when we post new stuff up there. But YouTube being what it is, every time that people do that, the metrics kind of wake up and they start to then push into other people's feeds. And it's one sort of silver lining of COVID has been that being online has allowed us to have a bit of a bigger reach. As sometimes when we're in the library, of course, there are parts of the meeting that are more interactive, don't quite get picked up by the mic, don't really make a lot of sense over YouTube. Being online kind of help with that, right? So let's take advantage of it and put it all up on YouTube and reach well beyond the Puget Sound region and all over the world. And one last bit of business here from me, and then I'll pass it over to Kurt. As is the case sometimes, we do have a slide for employment today. We have a group out of Kennewick, Washington. It's a electrical contractor that is looking for a BIM and VDC manager. I have more information that would fit on the slide for this. So if you have interest in this, give me a shout out. Send me an email or reach me through the Meetup site. If you don't mind making it known, you can always put it in the chat here, and I can get over to you a PDF with more information about how to go after this opportunity. But it seems interesting, and if you ever had any interest in Central Washington, and who knows, maybe they accept remote candidates, but I'm not quite sure about that. So I'll just leave it there. Let me know what if anybody has any interest in the job description. I'll pass it along to you, and I'll get you the contact info. Right on. So with that, a huge thank you to Topcon Solutions, who, by the way, have been members of the SeaRUG family for many, many years through name changes and then some. And I'm going to say a big thank you to Topcon, big thank you to Kurt for coming back and presenting to us. And I'm going to switch the screen over to him, and I will catch up with you at the end of the session. Thank you.
I'm Kurt Egley. I'm one of the technical specialists with Topcon Solutions Store, and I get a chance to go over parameters with you today. And I'm hoping that I'm going to do some more real life kind of, and not just show you the buttons underneath the hood, and we'll see whether I'm successful in that. So a few actual workflows. So what Topcon Solutions is, we're the retail division of Topcon Positioning, and Topcon is a huge company, and a lot of their business comes from, our business comes from positioning systems, surveying equipment, both for horizontal construction, which is, like civil 3D kind of AutoCAD use to go with that. Moving dirt around, bulldozers, but also vertical construction as well. And that's where Revit comes into play a little more heavily during the installation, because we can use that for positioning the pipe sleeves and embeds and so on and so forth, okay? By the numbers, at least the solutions part of us, the retail part, we have 13 brick and mortar locations, and we're in 20 states, 180 employees, and still growing. And I live in Washington, down by Portland, down in that area. Just a quickie about myself. 3 of my degrees are from the University of Idaho, and I worked at Autodesk for 17 years in a technical role with large architectural and engineering firms, and then I'm certified in a bunch of stuff. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is not talking about all of this right now, but if a question does come up, my colleague Cole is monitoring the chat. And then when we get to questions at the end, if we're not out of time, I will see if I can answer a question or two then at that point. Okay, so feel free to do that. We're going to do, you'll probably be muted at least till the end anyway when we're talking. So, if you wanted to break this down, sometime this might be another interesting topic here, the Revit element system. So this is, the components and detail items. And these are feeding in. This is the hierarchy down the middle, if you want to think of it that way. Category, family, type, and instance down the middle here. And for the element system, system families, loadable families, and place families feeding in at the family level. I guess that's, as the word implies, loadable family, right? Now, if you look at the graphical system, that wouldn't be another interesting topic too. Things like visibility graphic overrides, it's the sort of thing that feeds in at the top level here at the category. Maybe you want to halftone something or turn, the visibility of the ductwork on and off, that kind of thing. So today we're down in this part of the Revit system, and this is on parameters. So we have 5 different kind of parameters that are in Revit, and I'll be going through each of them here, not particularly in that order. And depending on what you're using them for, they can come in at the type level. A type parameter feeds in at where this green box is, or you can have them come in at instance level, and if you do that, it only affects the actual one instance of it. instead of affecting all the doors, all of the duct fittings, whatever you're working at. So there are five different ones, as I mentioned before, that we're going to be going through. So the system ones, those are the ones made by Autodesk. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Shared are ones, probably the most powerful ones that we can use ourselves in its own way. Because it can even come out and be part of a tag. It can be exported out to an external database if you wanted to, just like the system ones can. And project ones, love them. Can't go into tags, but it goes into schedules, and you can put them right in your own project, and away you go. If your VDC manager agrees or BIM manager agrees. Family, those are really strong in their own way too. I'll show you a couple different ones, dimensional, but also say by materials, yes, no parameters. And then global finally, which are moves things around, right? You can shift the position of your lights and things like that, very much like the positional ones that are in the family. So when I talk about type and instance, you'll see in these dialogues when it comes up, if you're not familiar with this, it maybe looks a little bit wordy here, but it's in this area. You decide whether you want it to be type or instance, whatever it is, the parameter that you're making. So in this one, I was making a fluid service category of dynamic viscosity, blah, 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 right? What do you want that to go with? Well, if it's type, it applies to the entire family, at least the type of the entire family. And if it's instance, each one of the same type can have their own settings without affecting all the others of the same type. So if this is a 36 by 80 inch door, if you change something like a hardware parameter as far as the hardware group, it would actually affect, if it was an instance parameter, it only affects itself and doesn't make all the rest of them have the same panic hardware, whatever you're putting on it. Okay, now the first one I thought I'd start with is the built-in parameters that come out of the grace of Autodesk. Sometimes they're called predefined parameters or system parameters, is usually what I call them anyway. And Autodesk builds in the ones that are common. Kind of a bummer sometimes though, that they're not editable. So here, let's just do a quickie on this one here. Let me see how slow the regen is on the screen here. Okay, it's up. I'm best probably if I just started up a new project here once and just showed you, poke around in here a little bit. All right, parameters. You're seeing them already off here on the left in my project. Properties palette, those are examples. If I were to issue, say, the pipe command, and we look there, here's a bunch more instance parameters. Instance parameters normally show up in this area out here. And if you're doing type parameters, those are just as the name implies underneath the hood here. So here's what they've already set up for us. So, would you have added in a parameter called manufacturer on a pipe? Elbow, yeah, probably. How about model? Yeah, probably. Maybe type mark, for example. So they made a bunch of parameters that they think we're going to end up making over and over and over again anyway, so that's a freebie. And there's something kind of similar to that if you launch others, like if I issue the wall command, it got our own instance parameters there, go to edit type. And you can see here, like if I scroll down a little ways, there's the identity data that we saw in the pipe, for example, manufacturer model, plus some other things they put in there like absorbance and roughness and things like that. But you might also see some that are very specific to the category that we're working with, like fire rating is made on the wall, it's made on the door, right? You wouldn't see that on a pipe, right? So that's how that part works, okay? And consequently, if I opened up one of the schedules that's in here, I'll just open up, say, a window schedule. You can go ahead and build these into your template with using their parameters, or make your own, obviously. And if I came over here, here's the ones that are being shown, but here are the other ones that are at this point anyway, are all just system parameters. And I'll show you how we can add more in ourselves, project parameters, shared parameters, that sort of thing in here. Okay, anyway, I wanted you to see that. Let me get out of this one. And from the same aspect, if I were to start up a new family here, I'm going to go to family new, and it's probably not quite keeping up on the screen here, but probably a step behind, but I want to get this through this one pretty quickly. I'll just show you mechanical equipment. Say I was making a loadable family, and you go check out the parameters here. A bunch of them already on whatever air handling unit or boiler that I'm about ready to make in the family under manufacturer, model number, description, things like that, without me having to create anything new, but I could down there, okay? So let me close this family. Those are system families, right? Very powerful. We don't have to create them ourselves. So that's a beautiful thing, right? The next one I wanted to jump over onto, though, is family parameters. Let's go to that one next. Controls variable values in family, such as dimensions or materials. Those are the two I decided to show today. Dimensions, I use those all the time to flex it, right? Flex the size of, you know, the reducer, the pipe reducer, or flex the size of the door or the cabinet or whatever. They're specific to that family, I guess it would imply. And I want to show you that you can control a parameter in a nested family as well. So, you know, the host and then a nested one, and you can pass it along and associate it. So I thought I'd show you that once here too. So I'll show you two things here at once. So let me go ahead and open up a family I got here, get started. Let's see, here we go. Go to that one, just a bookcase. And right now, there's only one type in here. So here is one that is being driven by some dimensional parameters. I could have just made this without any flexibility, but if you open up the plan view of it, you can see that I've got some parameters that have been defined in here. Some of them are, you say, no matter what, always keep that 1/4 of an inch, no matter what, always keep that 1 inch, but you can also give it a name, basically, like depth and width. And, you know, if I went to the front view, for example, let's see if I can hit the front view. Yeah, bunches more, right? Shelf width, height, things like that in there. Okay, so that's actually what can be driving that. So if I go back to this bookcase out here and said that, you know, looking at the family types, well, there are no types right now. Okay, so for example, I'm going to say I want a new type here, and I'm going to call this one 5x3. Okay, and then maybe I want another new type, and I'm going to call this one 6x4. And of course, that's just a name there. So if I change it down here to 6x4 and actually change the dimensions, there's the height, width, depth that I had defined in the other screens there. And if I hit apply, you'll see that it changes in size. Blink, and hit OK. And then if I take a look at this now, I have, or I can go back here. I have two different types here. Okay, now I'm just gonna load this into a project here once. Let me start up another new project here. So family, nope, open or new project. There we go. And construction template's fine. And then I'll come back to here and load that into the project once, so you can see what we've accomplished here so far. So say that I go with this and drop one of those in, zoom in a little bit closer here, you know, here, drop another one in. But also, you know, as I'm working on this, I now have two types. So here's this, you know, 6x4, right? So adjusting that dimensionally, right, as a dimensional parameter going on. Okay, now let me go back to the family once again here. Right now there is a material already loaded on this one. Okay, so let's do here. Let me make it first here. Once head up here. Let me go back to family types. I'm going to make a new parameter on this one. And this will be a family parameter, right? And I know that it cannot appear in schedules or tags. So if that's what you're heading for, this is not the place to do it, right? Later we'll come back and show how you can use shared parameters for this. But perhaps I could just call this one material, and then instead of it being length this time like we were using before with dimensional parameters, I could have this be text. It could be a number. It could be time even. Never used that one before. A yes, no parameter, or in this case, I'm going to go with it's going to be a material, and then maybe have it show up under materials and finishes. Now, if I left it on type like you're seeing here with type, if I change the material on one of them, like a 4x6 bookcase, change the material to maple, then all of them become maple. So if I'd like to have one that is maple and another one that's walnut, I'm going to make it instance-based. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. Say instance-based, so it gives that extra flexibility to the end user. Okay, now you're seeing it up here. It says by category, and I'm going to just click OK on that for now, though, because I'm going to associate the material that's on these doors and associate it over so that if the door picks up on that material list and transfers it over here onto the bookcase if they make a switch there. Okay, so to do that, I'm gonna the doors already have this, so I'm just going to remove them from the selection set here like that. And down here, if it says material by category, okay, there's a little square here next to it, a rectangle that I'm going to click on, because that's where you can associate the family parameter. All right, so there's one called material, also happens to be, that are on the doors. So I'm going to associate the two of them together and say OK. Now, if you look a little closer at this, when you do that, it grays this out, but it also puts a little equal sign right here to let you know that it's actually an associated one, not something that we're just hardwiring in and saying you shall be maple. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to say load into project and close this one and say the changes no. But when I overwrite it, I've just changed something with parameters, so I better take the bottom one here. So I do that. Okay, so now here I am back in again, and let me go to shaded ones. So you can see not only the type happen, but if I were to select one of these guys, and it says material, and I click there, little ellipses come up, and little dots there in the square. And when I click on that, I get a variety of different materials that have been transferred over, associated from the nested family within my family. So, like, say that I want mahogany for this one, and then I click OK and click off of it, it's brown. How about this guy right here? I'd do the same thing and maybe make it another color like teak, But because I made it an instance parameter, actually that one kind of looks like the other one too. Since I made it an instance parameter, if I were to say create similar on this one, and then I decided this should be something different, not the mahogany, I can click on there and make it, let's make it maple. That's kind of a light colored one. Click OK. Click off of it, and there you go, if the screen catches up with us. Okay, so anyway, that's family parameters, both dimensional in nature and materials. Those are the two that I chose there. So I'll go ahead and close out of this one. And let's go back to the slide here once. Family parameters. So the next one I wanted to get into is global parameters. Okay, now I decided to do the family parameter first because it's very dimensional in nature, and that's what it's about, right? You don't use a global parameter that I know of anyway to drive material, for example. At least I always use it anyway, if there's any other way to use this, to drive a value for a dimension or a constraint. All right, and associate it with an instance property to drive it. And then you can also report the value of a dimension so that the value can be used in equations. And I'll show you that. There's a formula that's built into here too. So let's go ahead and do this one now. And I'm going to use this data set right here. Oops, no, global parameters run. Let's go to that. I'll start with a lighting example here where we're going to use it to drive the distance of these lights from the wall. I'm just starting in 3D here, so you can see that there's a in wireframe, so you can see there's a conference table under there. Here's another conference room over here at the other end, and it has some lights above it as well. Okay, and with that said, let me go to the ceiling plan here, so now you can't tell quite as much what's going on underneath it. So let me start in this room up here. Some of these already have some on it, but I will show you how we can make them ourselves. If you have a global parameter on, in this case, a can light, when I click on it, it looks similar to what we saw in the family editor: width, length, height, whatever it is that you want to fill in. In this case, I chose distance to can. There's nothing magical about the name here. Right now it's set for 2 feet, it reports back. There's also a little pencil icon up here. And if you click on the little pencil icon, it brings up the global parameters dialog. Okay, so far we have distance to can, that's the parameter that I had made, and I could change that to be 3 feet, say, like that. And then if I click OK, now see how far they go away from the wall? And boom, any of them that have that all across globally will change to 3 feet. Now there's one outlier down here, you can see it, and it does not have one of these global parameters on it like that one does. This one doesn't have one yet. So if you've already made a global parameter, let me start with that one. How do you assign it to yet another light? Okay, in this case, so you do that with a line, well, a dimension. So I'm just going to say I'd like to put a dimension on that, and then when you click on it, up here in the ribbon, in the drop down, you'll see any that you've already defined. So if it's already defined, I can say, make that dimension into distance to can. And because the others are set for 3 feet, this one became 3 feet and now has a little pencil icon on it. Okay, now you've probably seen this before. If you delete this dimension, even if you haven't used global parameters, you'll see this dialog that shows up in the lower right corner warning me, and I can unconstrain at this point. We've used this, say to position a door in the middle of a hallway, position a bunch of lights down the middle of a hallway. You put an equidistant on it, and then you say, if you delete it, it'll say I'll retain that even if the physical dimension is gone from out here. And if I say OK to that as opposed to unconstraining it, now I don't have to hide it in the construction document. I can just simply pick on it and it'll show me the distance to can one. Okay, now that was if you wanted to use an existing one already. Okay, let me show you how we can make one from scratch. Like for example, here's 3 that I've already dimensioned. And this time, instead of choosing from the drop down, I'm going to hit this. What in the heck is that anyway? It looks like an old time Mac computer, maybe Macintosh, right? With a little carnation next to it. I'm not sure where they came up with that, but that icon. But anyway, that's a create parameter, right? And so, say that I call this one position, and it's going to be a length one because that's what it does. It doesn't do yes, no parameters. Global parameters don't do materials, right? And then, grouped under distance is probably a fine place for, dimension, fine place to go. And then I say, okay. Now I have a new one. They all got some pencil icons next to it, right? So if I pick on one of them and then click on the pencil icon, there's that new one in there, position in which I could change, like say that I want that to be 3 feet. And then you see how they're at 2 foot and change. Then all of them change it like that at once. Okay, kind of getting a sense for it. That's one workflow there. Let me close out of this and I'll show you another workflow. Let's use some windows this time and get the same sense for it. So back to open and go to the Audubon Education Center. And I put a couple on here so you can see kind of the same process here as well. Over here on the west end of the building, so let me go down to the west end. I got 2 dimensions here. This one down here is just a dimension from the corner of the building to the edge of the window. And this one up here, if I click on it, you'll see it has the little pencil icon next to it. I've already put a global parameter on that one. So, if I were to change this and say I'd like you to be 5 feet and click OK, the window moves, okay? So say that I'd like both of these to be symmetrical here. I want this to also be whatever's over on that side. So do the same process we did with the lights. I select the dimension, come up here from the drop-down, and say window distance. That's what I'd called the other one. And boom, right there, that changes to 5. If I were to change this back to, say, 4 again, like that, it changes to 4, but everywhere else changes, right? So imagine you've got a multi-story building and you've got windows at all 4 or 8 corners of your building, depending on the shape of the building, across all multi-stories. And you put these on. As soon as you change it in one, it'll change it on all the other floors as well, right? Hence the word global, right? Now, a little bit earlier, I said that we can also use it in a formula. So let's try that one. So I'm just going to drop in a window out here in a room, and then I'll place a dimension on that. I'll go from there to there and place the dimension. Okay. And then click on it. Okay, maybe I better let the screen catch up. Yep. And then from the drop down, I could say window distance, or, let's see, is that how I want to do it here? No, let's not take that one. Let's do this. Let's create a new parameter, and let's call this one half distance, because the point I'm trying to make here is that we can use formulas for this as well. We could have used this with lights too, but I'm going to make one called half distance on this guy, and then open up that dialog. You'll see the 2 of them. It initially picks up on whatever I had in here as dimensions out on the plan, but I'm just going to copy and paste. So I'm just hitting Control-C here and putting the formula up here, paste, divide by 2. Okay. So I'm just here, let me get it so you can see this a little bit better. So I'll, and then if I click out of the cell, you see how that instantly changed to a 2? So I'm doing window distance, which is this parameter, divided by 2. So now that one's 2 and that one's 4. And when I hit OK, you'll see this one changed 2 feet. Okay, so I say OK to that. And it changed to 2 feet. It's magic. Before I leave this, though, you can drive this from in here as well. If I were to say, actually, you need to be 3 feet. Look at there, window distance changes as well, right? So it's the formula's backfilling, and if I say OK to that, that one goes to 3 feet. And if you look over here at the west end of the building, those are now 6. Okay, so anyway, that's how a global parameter works in a couple different fashions here. Okay, let's do another one here. And back here, global parameter. Project parameters, huge fan. They are so flexible and so usable in so many different ways. Oh my gosh. I don't know, maybe that's dangerous if you're a BIM manager and you got a bunch of Revit users all creating project parameters left and right all over the place. Maybe you feel a certain lack of control. But, for end user types such as myself, I'm loving it, okay? Because I can use them in schedules, and I use it there a lot. I do sorting and filtering on it. When I do it, it only affects my one project, so I don't have a lot of issues going on with worrying about, David's project. And what I'm doing, is it affecting him? He's working on a different building, right? And no, it's just affecting my project. You can assign them to elements, and I'll be showing you that, but you can also assign project parameters to views and sheets. So I thought I'd show you how you can put it on a view too, not, probably what you were originally thinking of, perhaps, when you think about elements. some kind of a virtual physical object, right? They cannot be shared with other projects, right? So the idea here, the good news and bad news is it's not affecting David, but maybe if I wanted to, start to get more consistency, well, then we're going to be talking about shared parameters here in a moment. Okay, so let me put this one in play here. It's a two-step process for doing this. I'm going to, one of the things it can do is it can show up in a tag besides the schedule and so on. So I'm going to put that into use and have it, the shared parameter show up in a tag. Wait a minute, no, I'm doing project parameters here, just a second. Oh, you know what, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're doing project parameters. Let me go back to this guy again. Let's put a project parameter on this one yet. Okay, get in the shared parameters, which can go into tags. Whew. All right, I'm back in. Okay, so let's add a project parameter in. So it's better to go over this first before we get into shared parameters anyway. And you can see they're under the Manage tab, shared and project parameter right there next to each other. And what I want on here is a sound transmission class. So you can see that this project, they've been already working with it quite a bit, a lot of parameters in there on revision number and stuff like that. If I hit add, here's that kind of wordy looking dialog that comes up in project parameter, and not in tags, but in schedules. And I'm going to call this one sound transmission class. And I'd like to have this one be type-based because, like if you have a 6-inch metal stud with 2 layers of sheetrock, 5/8 inch sheetrock on either side of it, it's probably apples and apples that if the sound transmission will be the same for both of them, right? And many, not like global parameters where it's all about length. There's actually quite a few here that we saw in the family parameters that we can choose for a type of parameter here. So like in this case, I'm just going to go with text perhaps, and it'll be a number in the end, but this way somebody could put in STC 20 or 33 or something like that, right? If it's text. And then maybe I'll just have it under identity data here. And then over here to the right is what you would like to have it affect. So you can choose multiple categories if you want. I just want it to go on 2 walls in this case. Okay, so let's click OK to that. And then there's our new parameter, in this case, a project parameter, and I click OK. Okay, so let's choose a wall and see what we got. If I scroll down a little bit to identity data, wait a second. Oh, it's because I told it to be a type parameter. Go to edit type. Now it's instance parameter to be down here, type parameter up here, right? I told it to be a type parameter. And if I scroll down, then I'm going to find the thing that I just created, which is right here. There we go, sound transmission class. So say that this one is, say, a 43 for the sound transmission class on that type, which is the P4. Actually, that's P4, say, on that one. And then, maybe on this one, here's a big old beefy one out here. Let's do this one right here. Go to edit type, scroll down to it, and maybe a sound transmission class of like 63. So like 33 is a typical interior wall in a house, say, and then STC 63 would be 88% quieter. Okay, so this thing is very soundproofing, and then okay, like that. Now type parameter, right? I put on that one. So I said that it could show up in a schedule. So let's go to a wall schedule here and put that into play. And you can see here I got wall type, wall area. If I went to the available fields now, I made a new one called sound transmission class, and there it is. I'm adding that, and I click OK. And there it is. There's the 43 I put in. There's the 63 I put in. so on and so forth on that. Okay, now you can add project parameters to elements such as I just did here, but I also said that you can add them to views. So like if nothing's selected, you're seeing the properties of the view in the properties palette, right? So say that I wanted under identity data, I'd like to have a new one in here called view use. How am I using that view? Okay, so project parameters are good for this as well. And I can use that to organize my browser if I wanted to. So for example, right now it's being organized by family and type. So first, like floor plans are all together, and then first floor, second floor, third floor, that sort of thing, right? Ceiling plans all together, elevations all together, so on and so forth. But if I wanted to, I could create one on views. So let's create a new project. Actually, let's do this first. Let's get an extra floor plan view out here. I'm just duplicating it. And then I'm going to say that this guy right here, ultimately, I'd like it to be a working view. Okay, and I type in the word working just for my own edification so I know what's what. And I'd like this one to be a printing view. I like organizing things like this that I'm doing right here, printing and working, because then I get all of my working views together that I can be fearless. I can change view range. I can turn the crop off altogether. I can halftone stuff, and it doesn't affect any sheet. And then printing views, I put first floor, second floor underneath there that are printing views, and every one of those views is on a sheet. So I don't dare mess with the crop or the view range because while I'm just trying to figure something out. But it's also the place where I would go to tag and put in text and dimension and things like that, right? So what if I wanted those to all be grouped together? I can do that with a project parameter as well. If I went back to here and said I wanted to add one, and I'm going to call it view use, nothing magical about the name. And it is, let's see, text, I guess I would want it to be. And maybe under identity data, I just happen to be a fan of that. And then in this case, instance, like I have it set for right now on view use, because if there's two first floor plan views, one of them could be printing, one could be working, right? And then although there's a big long list of categories here that, pipes and walls and furniture and things like that, there's some kind of esoteric ones in here like views as well. So I have a new one called view use that's going to end up on views. And then I say okay to that. And now if you look a little bit farther down when nothing's selected on your screen to identity data, and I can see right here, view use. Okay, so let me highlight this one. That's the working one. And view use for it is working, right? Fill that in. And then the printing one, view use on it is printing. I usually like to do this stuff in the template for very good reason, because it ends up being a lot of busy work. But once you got it, straightened away, it can be kind of sweet. So right now you can see here everything is, floor plans, ceiling plans, so on and so forth down the list here. But I'm going to reorganize this now. So I go here to Project Browser, and I want one on View Use. So I hit New, and I'll call it View Use. Why not? Doesn't have to be anything else. And I'm going to sort and group on view use, and then put all the families and types together. So floor plans, elevations, ceiling plans, sections. Okay, but view use will be at the very top here. And I only did 2 of them, by the way. So you're going to see get to printing and working here. I'll expand these out and then I'll zoom in a little closer so you can see here. If you're organizing it that way, you're going to get, whoops, let me try again. There we go. You're going to get a bunch of under question marks because they haven't been defined yet. Like, where should I go, right? Should I be printing or working? Or coordination is another one. Sometimes we use export, so like a Navisworks or DWG export, a bunch of floor plans there. Now I get my printing and working together, and it can really save a lot of headaches. for later. Okay. And now let me get into shared parameters. Got ahead of myself a little bit earlier there. Okay, and shared parameters will be my last here. I think we're doing pretty good on time. So with that was project parameters. So shared parameters, pretty strong stuff for mere mortals such as ourselves. They can be used in multiple families or projects. Now, you remember, like if I go back to the slide that was up there a moment ago, project parameters are specific to a single project file. Okay, so when I put them in there, I can't access it from some other project or from the family editor. But the way that shared parameters works is it makes a separate file, a TXT actually, that you can put in a common location that other people can get at it. Usually that's how we roll, right? You protect it. In other words, maybe make it read only or something like that, or where other people can read it but not edit it, so that it is usually controlled by someone. I make a request to David to add an extra shared parameter in there for voltage, right? And then instead of getting, me putting in one that's V, and John, my colleague, puts one in that's volt, and then Susan puts one in that's voltage, and none of us can use the same schedules and stuff. Instead, there's a consistency that can be brought out by using shared parameters, as the name implies, shared across multiple projects and or families. Okay, they can be tagged and they can be scheduled. Okay, so let's go give this one a try then. All right, now I'll go back to that community center here. Kind of a big model, but I have it starting up on third floor, so that it doesn't take so long to get to it for us. Okay, so I think David and I were talking before the presentation here, and if we have time, maybe he could talk to this a little bit, but different ways that you can use it. Tags to be used by the contractor to show off exactly what it is that you want them to build. Tell the story. I always think of it as telling the story to the contractor so that they understand how to build what's in my mind. So I thought I'd do a design development one. They'll say that I'm trying to balance some of these classrooms for their use on how many students should be able to be in per classroom. Okay, so two-part thing. First, you need to make the shared parameter, and a lot of times that's a BIM manager or maybe that's you. Okay, and then so we'll do this once and get this out of the way. Shared parameter. So I'm on the Manage tab, shared parameter. I did this before class here, and then deleted it so you could see me create it. But it's saying, where's it at? Last time I looked, it was there. I'm going to hit create. So I'm actually making a TXT out there, right? You can call it whatever you want, and say save. Sometimes when I do this in templates that I build for firms, if they're an AE firm, I might make one that's architecture, structure, civil, and then I'll make another one that's MEP, for example, so that the groups and such like that aren't so massive. So now I have a new TXT out there. Let me make a new group. I'll call this one room information, something like that. Nothing magical about that either. And then because you have different groups here, might have to do with walls. Another one, it might have to do with furniture, windows, however you want to shell. And I'm going to put new parameter underneath it. In this case, I'm going to call it occupancy factor. Occupancy factor, and it's not length, it's actually a number. Okay. And I tried this for the longest time using integer. It seemed like it would make sense because basically what I'm trying to do is say I want 22 square foot per child in the classroom, or per adult, I guess, if it's an Audubon Education Center. Could be adults too. Okay, but anyway, I couldn't get the formula to work, but number worked. So now I got a new shared parameter in that txt, and I say okay. Now this is the setup part, and I just want you to see what this looks like. Here's the txt out here, and if I open it up, and they tell you right up front, do not edit this manually, okay? So this is why you protect it, right? Because it looks like I could make my own, you know? If I have to go to David for this, and he looks like he's busy, right? And he's, you know, he's swamped. So I go, hey, you know what? Occupancy factor, number, I can do this myself. You open it up, you corrupt it. You corrupt it, okay? So you know, if you can look at it, but if you actually try and edit it, you're not going to get it right. Let Revit do that for you, okay? So I have a new one in here called number now. Okay, so now here's the use of it during a project after you've set it up. So I'm going to go back to project parameter again, which seems kind of odd because I'm going to use a shared parameter. But notice here, if I say occupancy factor and it's not in here, if I hit add, it gives me the choice for project parameter or shared parameter, either one, right? So you start with project, well, you set it up with shared parameter, then you access it by hitting the project parameter button, but going over to shared parameter, okay? A little odd, right? But let's go ahead and do that, and I'll hit select then. And I see my shared parameter file with its group and the parameter I just created and say, okay. It fills it in, but it's all gray. Like you cannot come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to be an integer. I'm going to be text instead or something like that. It won't let you, just let you decide where you want to put it under, right? So, you know, I'm going with identity data today, so I'm going to put it under there. I'm going to leave it as an instance parameter. Now, normally I might put something like a type parameter on a classroom so that 22 square feet for all kids, but there might be other classrooms that, you know, like art, for example, they maybe need a little more room to spread out for their easels and whatever. So I'll keep it as an instance parameter, and I'm going to put it on rooms. Okay, so let me find rooms in the list here and say, okay, instance parameter rooms, okay. And then there's occupancy factor and okay. And if I select one of the rooms now, like this, and I come down, here it is, into the identity data, and you can see here that there's an occupancy factor on that, that's blank. Now, I could go around from room to room to room and fill in 22, 23, whatever the number is. I'm going to actually do it through a schedule here to speed things up. So I go to my room schedule that I've made that has been sorted by name, you know, so that'll put all of the classrooms together. So here's all of the classrooms. And so name, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in my occupancy factor. So just as we could have done with the project parameter to use it in a schedule, we can do the same thing with the shared parameter like this. And I say okay to that, and I get this new column in here on occupancy factor. And then I'm going to go with 22 for all the classrooms. So this kept me from having to do it because I toggled off instance based, you know, don't show all the instances. So it's doing like a blanket 22 on all of them. And you know, if I come back here now and select on one of those classrooms like this guy right here, again, there it is, 22. Told it to be a number, so it's got a bunch of trailing zeros, but not a problem, right? Still going to get her done for me. Okay, so now what do I do with that? Let's see. I'm going to take this tag, which is part of what I want to show you here, that we can get to show up in a tag. And I'm going to go into the family and see how I can get a shared parameter to be used in the family as well. So I'm going to add in a new parameter right here. It's not showing up initially in the labels, but I can hit on the little add button down here. And it's only going to add shared parameters. You see how everything else is grayed out? Hit select. There's occupancy factor that shows up. Click OK. Click OK. It shows up. Now, I'm not going to add it in because I'm actually going to make a formula out of this. I'm going to use formula instead of just adding it in straight up. So let me do, say, max capacity here. Capacity. Make a new calculated value. That's a number. And I'll zoom in a little closer later on for you here. I'm going to tell the formula to first, let's tell it to take area and divide it by 1 square foot. And what I'm trying to do here is to get apples to compare to apples as opposed to apples to oranges. In other words, by dividing area, which is in square feet, by square feet, we negate the square feet and make it a number, and that number is divided by our new number parameter. Okay, at least that's how I understand it. Now, if I wanted to, I can divide that by occupancy factor. So instead of typing it in and blowing it, I'm going to hit this little button over here, and then this way I can't accidentally fat finger it in. Okay, so there's occupancy factor, and I'll go ahead and close that as well in parentheses. Now, I don't want half of a child to be reported, so I'm going to round it down. And so here, let me get my cursor out of the way and zoom in a little closer. So, basically I'm saying area divided by occupancy factor and then round it down and then click OK. There we go. And you can put a prefix on this if it would be handy for who's looking at it in the project, like max, and then children perhaps. Oops, here, let's children. And then it's not going to be more than 99 children in a room, so I'll just say XX. These are just the sample value we're looking at. And if I click OK, there you can see it now, max blah, blah, blah children, right? And then I can reposition if necessary. Okay, now I got that. Let's load it right back into the project again and override it. And because it's parameters, I'm going to overwrite existing and parameter values. Now you can see down here that I've got the shared parameter showing up in a tag. And this room can hold 22, 21, 15. If I start moving these walls around, and this is an example where we're using this as a design development tool. Now I got 19 in that one, 17 in this one. Maybe move this wall over. Squeeze it down a little bit. Now it's got 21. Now it's got 20, and this one's got 20, and that one's got 18, so on and so forth. Right? So this has been a rundown. I know we're at the top of the hour here. This has been a rundown of parameters, system shared, project, family, and global parameters here. Each one of them has their own strengths, and using it to your advantage, knowing what those strengths are, can really make life better, make your projects work better. And I'll give a minute here to see if Cole comes back, that there's any questions that you would like to.
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay. Well, then that just shows how incredibly on the money I was. I'm just too clear here. So and maybe with that, I will get a hold of us if you need help with Autodesk products. We're not only platinum with Autodesk, which is their top tier of a reseller, but also with Bluebeam as well. So with that, I guess I'll hand it back over to David. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kurt. I actually have a question, and I know we are at the top of the hour. If folks need to jump off, I would say thank you for joining us. I really look forward to seeing you next year, but if you can hang out for a couple of minutes, do have a question. If you cannot, it'll be on the YouTube recording. So nice plug for the YouTube channel there. I'm wondering if you have any best practices or advice or how to go about thinking in an increasingly collaborative industry and world, and in a environment where we're pushed towards BIM 360 and cloud models, things like that, and many stakeholders across projects. What are some of the best strategies for dealing with shared parameters project-wide when you might have more than one company? You might want to leverage somebody else's data and your tags, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think that that's still, as far as I understand it, you're still limited to one text file to hold all your shared parameters, and a lot of those sort of firm-specific I don't know if those things need to be set up kind of at the project level early on, if you do have such a collaborative form of agreement, or kind of what are you finding out there? What do people do?
Yeah, it's still set up so that you can only access one TXT at a time, just like you said. Other than you can flip back and forth. You just say select, and now I'm going to go look at a different one and then come back again. So at one level, it could be, say it's like M, E, and P trying to get together, or this, a project that comes to mind, a university that I worked on out in New Jersey. There was two different architectural firms on it. One was more of a design firm, but they were both doing the same kind of work. But okay, it was a little rough because they both kept changing each other's designs. But say that they had their own shared parameter file that each other could access. You could do it a couple different ways. Just post them for people to go back and forth in a shared location to say, now I'm going to use this shared parameter file and pick up these parameters. Now I'm going to use a different one. Or if you can really get enough buy-in from an organized team to where, before you begin too much work and get too far along, you do just like you would within your own firm and say, which of these variables are we going to use? And then make kind of the Uber shared parameter file. I guess that would be my thoughts on it, David.
Okay. Yeah, it's just one of those things that knowing that there's the limitation, you only have the one file, but you can, like in my case, we've got concrete drawings that want to show MEP sleeves, and
yeah,
love to be able to tag them with certain parameters and sizes and things like that, and let them move them about wherever they need to move them. But give me control over where the tag goes so it looks good in my drawing, right?
Yeah. I can tell what you were doing this morning, David, weren't you? You were up to your eyeballs in that. I can tell.
Right on. Well, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions on the chat either, so maybe we'll just give people their afternoon back.